Well, happy Monday morning here. Happy Black Monday. Great day to probably do all this UFL dispersal draft stuff. But hail to the Commanders here. Big day. I can tell we are, there might not be any West Coast teams in this new UFL, but that's certainly not stopping us from prioritizing the time zones for. Oh, wait, no. 7 a.m. here. We're live. We have John Vogel here doing lots of busy things, taking time out, which I really appreciate during draft season and all of that. I was getting John's thought, who should the Commanders take here? Number 2, we got lots of big hires today. John, how are you doing?
I'm great, dude, and thank you for inviting me. Thank you for having me on, as always. I appreciate, obviously, the platform that you built, Reed. You've done a great job with it, and it's going to be fun, I think, look at some of these results.
It'll be good. It was almost better last week. I've been battling this illness now. I think I got a cold at the Winter Classic and was
Yeah.
just dripping everything for a week. So this is good here on all of this. We have all the rosters picked. I will get on this, pull it up here so we can screen share. What have you thought how this process goes? Because we really haven't gotten anything like this before. We have 16 teams. We're moving to 8. We're trying to protect players and all this. Do you enjoy how all of this has gone?
I think to an extent, as a fan of roster building, yes, because there's half these leagues became available where you kind of condense the talent down a little bit, so it's going to help the product on the field, right? That's going to be the first thing that's going to be good. What I don't like about it is, it's just the fact that there wasn't a lot of clarity about this throughout the process. I mean, I think when I reported back on November 30th what those teams were going to be with the merger, there were players that had no idea about it that were, upset and angry with me going, well, how do you know this if I don't know anything about it? Because the PAs didn't know anything about it. So, from that standpoint, I think I was disappointed about, because there's a lot of players that are going to be losing opportunities. But in the grand scheme of things, in terms of a television product, in terms of the game and how much better it's going to look, it's going to be a big improvement, I think.
Yeah, and to me, it really, we've talked in with all the kind of combining of all of this, football talent from both of these leagues and everything, and you can talk to Fox, and we've done a lot of business stuff on here. This will be exciting to talk football today. It really consolidating all of this talent here into 8 teams is really going to be remarkable. Kind of how to see what these teams end up doing. Right, you're not fighting for talent now between 2 different leagues. You got 16 going down to 8. I'm hearing your audio is a little low, John. We tried to work with that through before, but maybe we can turn that up. So why don't we get in here? Do you want to go team by team? Do you have any other general thoughts before we get in?
Well, first off, I like some of the different things that we're doing. At least, the fact that, first off, with the XFL, everything was really tight and condensed, right? It was really hard to get information from them. They didn't like anything leaking. And so I think when we started getting picks from, Mike Mitchell, James Larson, and those guys, they started leaking back on Friday. I was very surprised, because that's been very much against what has normally, been, the routine, at least with the XFL. They don't, the leaks were terrible and all this and that. So it looks like they've loosened up a little bit. That's good. That's going to help push, I think, engagement, because insider information is really what drives sports at this point. All the top reporters are insiders. Adam Schefter, Ian Rappaport, Tom Pelissero, all these guys, that's what they do, is they're insiders. They get all this insider information, and that's what really drives the interest in the league, is because, oh, well, I'm hearing it first from these guys, blah, 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 blah. So to kind of open up the doors a little bit and let this information start coming out, that's going to help their fan involvement, I think. So that was a good step. I liked that. The other thing I want to also make a note about is despite all the confusion about whether this was going to be Friday or Monday, and then we had all that going back and forth with it over the week, it's going to be good to see what kind of opportunities are going to be opened up for these guys, because we're going to be filling up these rosters and like we said, condensing the talent and putting together really good teams. And so what I think it's going to help do is it's going to help even the playing field across the board, right? Where we have the opportunity to sit here and kind of look at these rosters and see, okay, well, this guy, he was a big hit in the league, and he played really well at Vegas, or he played really well at Seattle or whatever that team was. And seeing him get an opportunity to join this team, it's going to help complete it. That's going to be the fun side of this in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah, just in terms of kind of how this was all rolled out, and no one really cares to think what I have to say about any of this stuff, but it was conveyed to me that we didn't want it done, and I understand we got a lot of moving pieces and all of this stuff, and well, we didn't want people's feelings to get hurt if they weren't in the thing, or we didn't want things like to get leaked out. Like you said, it was leaked out anyway. John and I are here now with a press release and a Zoom link, so it's not hard to kind of put things together like this and kind of get information going out. So that's all I would say. Let's get into this so I can share. And I posted the link in the chat if anyone wants to follow along. But UFL team rosters here, first and foremost. So we know all this, the conferences and all that stuff. Arlington Renegades here, and we can keep kind of deep dive or not as much as you want here. Obviously, we're not going to touch on everything. Things that are standing out here for you. We're seeing some previous holdovers and kind of the protected list, and there's a lot of information to go through here. What do you think?
Yeah, so these are the complete rosters that they're listing, aren't they?
They're listing, so it'll be like protected players from 2023, and then the people that they picked up from the other teams here in the dispersal.
So first off, Vic Beasley is still staying in the league. I think that's jumping off the page at me right now. Because Beasley, if you remember back in the NFL, back when the Falcons made that Super Bowl run, blew the 28-3 lead in the Super Bowl, that one, he was a 14.5 sack guy that year. He came into the XFL. He played with, like it says there, he played the previous team, Vegas, last year. Did some decently good things. Looks like this is probably the right level for him at this point of his career. I am surprised that with all the injuries in the NFL that he's still available. Because the NFL, there's been a lot of injuries, especially on the outside with edge rushers. TJ Watt just went down this weekend. Miami lost a couple over the last couple weeks. I'm surprised to see that he's still available, and that he's on this list. That's popping off. Adrian Ely, I think, is a good tackle and played decently well for Seattle. When Randy Buehler was running that Seattle organization last year, I thought he did a really good job with the whole situation, right? I thought he did a really good job getting offensive linemen in there. I know that was one thing he was worried about before the season started, having enough offensive linemen, but I thought he did a good enough job. And there's another one that's on that list too that's playing there, Chris Owens. Both of these guys are from big schools, Oklahoma, Alabama, played decently well down there at that level. They're big guys that are maybe not athletic enough for the NFL, and that's why they're here, but they're good for this level. So that's going to help Arlington with the offensive line. And we're talking about a team that what 6-6 last year if you count the 2 playoff wins. So one of the things that they really had issues with was protecting their quarterback, and that's why they went through the quarterbacks that they did. So that's why you see that the offensive lineman. Marcus Minor is a guy that he's young. I actually remember when he went through the CGS when I was with the Brawl Network. We were the partners with the College Gridiron Showcase that year, and he was on my top 50 list of prospects that were going through there. Now, that was 2021, and it was kind of funny because a bunch of those All-Star games got canceled due to COVID that year. So, the NFLPA Bowl wasn't played, the Shrine Bowl wasn't played, so a lot of those guys that normally play in those games ended up at the College Gridiron Showcase, and he was one of them. Lindsey Scott is a huge addition right here because if you look at their quarterback situation, Luis Perez, Holton Ahlers, not exactly guys that distill a lot of confidence in you as a team, right, as your quarterback. We've seen Perez has bounced around, spring leagues now since the AAF, right? Like, he's been doing it for a long time, but we saw the limitations last year, especially when he got to Arlington. He doesn't have a real strong arm, and he's not very mobile. And those are the two things across football right now that are dying if you're a quarterback. It's very difficult for you to be able to make things happen. It doesn't matter how well you can process or how accurate you are if you can't move in the pocket and get outside the pocket and then also have the arm strength to drive the ball more than 20 yards effectively, you're going to struggle. And that's kind of been Perez's issues. Ayler's is basically like poor man's Tim Tebow.
Okay.
So, that'd be the best way to describe him. So you bring in a guy like Lindsey Scott, who played at Incarnate Word, who went through the NFL draft process. I don't believe he played in these leagues last year. I know that they were holding rights. Both leagues drafted him in their rookie drafts, and were reserving rights to him. So that's a huge addition here. So because if he decides to come down to this level, he hasn't played in the NFL this year. I don't believe he's on a roster. If he comes down this year, he's gonna be one of the star quarterbacks in this league, because Lindsey Scott, he's a baller, dude. He's got an arm. He can get outside the pocket. The one thing that's kind of holding him back at this point is the medicals. His medicals were really bad, and then he also injured himself when he was playing in the NFL PA Bowl pretty good last year. So Lindsey Scott's popping off the screen at me. And then the last one I'm going to point out is LaRon Stokes, who had a really good year with Vegas last year. Really good defensive tackle. I knew him coming out of going into the NFL draft in 2022. Really smart guy, high IQ guy. And ironic, here's a crazy fact about him. He was homeschooled. So he wasn't around football for very long before he went to college and ended up going to Oklahoma, played 5 years thereafter. And I don't think he got drafted. He was in a camp, ends up at Vegas, had a really good year with Vegas, had some NFL interest over the year. Ultimately, he's still here. But that's a guy that potentially I think you're going to see continue to get those reps. He didn't have a lot of reps late in his career at Oklahoma. I think that's why he's here. But yeah, no, LaRon Stokes is going to be a big pickup for Arlington here too.
Yeah, I'll be curious. And I've seen, and I know Anthony Miller covers the Renegades, did here through the XFL and now obviously through the UFL. And he's commenting in our group chat, Vic Beasley over there. And especially like you said with the quarterbacks as well, it seems like there's a lot of moving pieces there. Not sure where they're going to go yet. And it should be quite the quarterback battle there. And I don't know. I mean, we love Perez, but he is getting elder in age and has been around a long time. And like you said, when Lindsey Scott, I think it was when he got picked up in the college draft or whatever, his rights over the summer. I remember the big excitement about that. We had Coach Craig Sports and you and everyone on talking. So seems like it kind of a wealth of resources there, I guess.
Yeah, and I'm going to go ahead and pull up my report from him last year just to make sure that I'm on the right page here, because that's the thing, man. I look at so many guys. I actually had him graded out as he'd be like a high priority free agent if I was looking at him as an NFL prospect, right? Which is really good when you're coming up from Incarnate Word. He played 1 year at Incarnate Word. He actually was a redshirt at LSU, went to junior college, played at East Mississippi, then went to Missouri, didn't play there, so he transfers to Nicholls State. Spends 3 years at Nicholls State. Plays 2, because back then when he transferred, still had the transfer rule where you had to sit for a year. And then goes his last year as a grad senior and goes to Incarnate Word. Absolutely lights up the stat sheets there. Now, the interesting thing about Incarnate Word, if you know anything about college football, which I'm a college football nerd, I think that you like it a little bit, right, Reed?
Well, more on the wife side. I got enough football stuff I got to track here.
There you go. So basically, G.J. Kinney, does that name ring a bell to you?
No.
G.J. Kinney was like a third-string quarterback in the NFL for 5-6 years, right? And if these spring leagues had been around, he'd probably have played in them.
Yeah.
But he ended up going into coaching. He was at Incarnate Word his first year last year, brings in Lindsey Scott. They go have this crazy, awesome year, make a huge run. He gets the head coaching job after a year at Incarnate Word, goes straight up to Texas State, flips a 1-11 team into a bowl team where they won their bowl game. So Lindsey Scott was a product of G.J. Kinney, who played quarterback in the NFL for a long time. So there's good bloodlines there too. But Scott, yeah, very athletic, moves outside of the pocket, good arm. He's got the potential to be a star in the UFL. He really does.
Are you, and I guess we haven't gotten, we'll do more of the roster stuff here in terms of Are you bullish on this idea here? The spring football just got better. Let's ball out, baby. All the commercials we've seen over the last weekend. Like, do you think that this is a good spot now for all this talent to make it? I mean, you lived through here through the 3 seasons like I have.
Yeah, so I've seen the people, that have concerns about how the league's going to work, right? And I understand those concerns because I think when you have two sides that are merging, there's two reasons. It's one of two reasons. One, because you need to get your resources together before you both die. Or two, because you're just going to be better together. I think that's the only two reasons that you're going to merge is, from a business standpoint. In this case, it felt like they were both on the verge of dying, right? And so merging together, bringing all the resources together, that's going to help. Now, the concerning part is the fact that they went from 16 to 8 teams, which tells you that they're still worried about resources. They're still worried about all these different things that are going to impact the league directly, right? So I think it works. These leagues have gotten through full seasons. They've gotten to their championship games. The USFL's done it twice. The XFL's done it once. Now you don't have them competing against each other. And like I said, I think the product on the field is going to be better because we're condensing this talent. It's all coming down. So the teams are going to be a little bit better. Think about the top 4 quarterbacks in the USFL over the last few years. I think that in terms of performances from what we've seen, we could say Case Cookus, we could say Brian Scott, we can say, man, I know that there's a couple others. I can't think of them off the top of my head right now. Those are the two that popped to my head. Obviously Birmingham. Those two guys, right? So and then you look at the XFL and you think about those guys, the top guys that were over there, AJ McCarron, DC's Jordan Tyamu. All these guys are going to be in the same league now. They're not going to be in separate leagues. And so anytime you see a step up in the quarterback play overall, when we're not looking at a team going, man, they don't really have a quarterback, and you're looking and it's half the league, right? You're sitting there going, this could go either way. Like, I don't know what you do with that kind of offense. Anytime you can have, 6 or 8 teams, 75% of your league has a quarterback that's capable, it's going to help the product on the field.
In terms of Arlington here, we'll get back to the roster stuff. I'm interested, we've talked a lot about this interconference and, the opening day kickoff game, which I announced we'll be at, that we have our flights and everything booked for that. So we'll be in Arlington for the Renegades hosting the Stallions, but getting this continuity over year 1 to year 2 for some of these XFL teams and now going into year 3 for the USFL teams, I think is going to be really interesting. I mean, I'm very scared of this, if you're an XFL person, this Birmingham Stallions Renegades game, but do you think they've done enough here? We can start going down through more of the teams. Do you think they've done enough, at least? So if my understanding is this is step 1, then there'll be kind of an open draft now happening on the 15th, I think, and then they'll release results for that afterward, kind of the full rosters. But thus far, how are you feeling about the Renegades?
Well, I think that there's some good things here. Like I said, the offensive line's gotten better. The defensive line's gotten better. So, ultimately, you need to win in the trenches. And I think if Arlington is going to play Birmingham week 1, which we know I think is the opening game now, they're going to have to win in the trenches. So they've got some tools. They've got some weapons to do all this stuff. Now, the other thing that's kind of confusing about the list is I don't know how many of these guys are going to play, right? Because I look at a Noah Taylor. Noah Taylor just came out last year into the NFL draft out of North Carolina. He's just a transfer from Virginia. And that's a name that kind of pops off a little bit there where it's like, I don't know if he's going to be there next year. He very well may be signing a futures contract and sitting on an NFL roster because he's a talented guy. He's like 6'7", and he's long and freaky athletic. So while he's not a refined guy, that's hard to say. It's hard for me to expect him to be in the league. So there's names that are across the board that are like this on this roster. So I don't know how many of these guys are going to be there. But I think that just looking at the guys that they took out of these other leagues, even Roderick Perry is a good pickup from Houston. That's another defensive tackle. If Jalen Redmond comes and plays, now you've got Redmond playing with Stokes. They played together at Oklahoma. They played really well together, actually. There's a lot of good talent here to help them in the trenches. I think they did get better, but Birmingham's getting better too. That's going to be the thing.
Yeah, we'll get to that here. It's funny. Pat was texting in the group. I don't want to throw out. Excuse me. One of the players here just found out they were protected from this live stream. So just talking about, how all the results and everything coming out here. So I don't know if this is like when you try it for the school play and then you come back and you check that list on Monday morning, like, okay, did I get what did I get signed up for? But anyway, congratulations to all of that, and obviously lots of other steps to come here if you weren't in this initial one. Stallions, we talked. Powerhouse team, right? Obviously, back-to-back champions and all of that. To me, kind of the pinnacle of spring football. Just leadership and coaching and kind of team building and all of that stuff. I think even though the director of player blocks me on Twitter, I still have tremendous things to say about the Stallions. Interesting moves here. What do you make? And we can start kind of scrolling the list.
A couple names popping off here to start. Calvin Ashley. So going right back to the trenches, right? Calvin Ashley was probably one of the better offensive linemen in the entire league. I know that he was selected early in the selection draft when the league started. New Jersey wanted him bad, and they got him. Now he's here. And New Jersey was one of those teams that ran the ball really well both years, right? They had the Darius Victor. They had the running quarterback threats. And they were able to do good things on that side of the ball. But it all started because the offensive line. Darius Victor is a good running back, but he's like 5'5", so he's not a guy that's going to consistently run with power the way that, you can if you don't have an offensive line. And so they're getting better on the offensive line. That's a huge spot. Chris Blewett might help their special teams a little bit too. He's a decent kicker. Looking at the rest, I really like that they picked up Henry St. Amour from the Breakers. That's going to be a huge pickup for them right there because, New Orleans, if you remember the first year of the USFL, had an absolutely explosive edge rushing group and were able to rotate 4 guys and consistently bring pressure to the quarterback. And Henry was part of that group. So I think him added here is going to be a huge help. Good to see Jamar Smith still on the list. Adrian Martinez is interesting if he comes over. As they're, obviously trying to replace quarterbacks Alex Magoo's in Green Bay. Green Bay likes him up there a lot. He'll stick around. I don't think they're gonna let him go. But Adrian Martinez is there. So he's interesting. He was at I believe it was Nebraska. So when Nebraska hired Scott Frost, Adrian Martinez was the first 4-star guy that Frost decided he needed to have on the team. Went out there, got him, played a few years there at Nebraska, ends up transferring to Kansas State this last year. And, he's got a decent arm. He's a decent athlete and kind of fits that, I would say poor man McSorley. So there's good tools there. But Jamar Smith coming back is good, at least on the list. We'll see how he looks after the injury. I guess if you get down to the bottom of the list, Eli Walker is decent from Pitt. James Wiggins is decent from the Breakers as well. So a couple pieces to help the secondary. That's probably to fill in the pieces that they lost to the NFL this year. Yeah, there's some good stuff here.
Yeah, it's interesting. And obviously pointing out here, so you've got
Channing Stribling. I'm sorry, I missed that.
Yeah,
Channing
I did
Stribling.
see. Yeah, from the stars, I did see that. Someone here that what was interesting just to point out. So obviously the XFL team's drafting from the XFL, right, and then the USFL. So then the next step will be open. So just in case you're following along, and it's harder to like. I even saw people when we were posting last night, like, hey, we're going to go live and all this stuff. Like, people still trying to figure out how this process is going. But, obviously all of these are kind of inter USFL signings right now, and then it will be opened up to the future at that point. Obviously a lot of your names, you expect your Scooby Wrights, your Jabronis of the world there to stick around, and Willie Arbors and all that. Channing Stribling's excited. This Hercules, right, from the Generals, that's a big move. I do know that. Yeah, obviously Channing Stribling on here. So good to see that way, right? It's still this kind of mixed mash of, okay, we can only do so many and we can only do it from so many teams. But I don't think the Stallions have needed a lot of improvements across the board, but certainly bolstering here at this point with everything else going on. So
absolutely, yeah. And they picked up some good pieces, right? Channing Stribling I think has been the interception leader in the USFL over the last couple of years. Overall, actually, Daniel Easom is a good add too at safety. I missed that one initially as well. So that's kind of the thing too, is when you look at the draft, at least, from the guys that they picked up drafting in this rotation from the defunct teams, they're going to go target the best guys, right? Like, that's obviously, I know I'm kind of saying the obvious here, but the fact that, Birmingham has got this many, just, from initial, even Chris Orr, that's another good one. Chris Orr was a tackle leader for the Generals. Thinking about, you start to kind of think about, okay, well, Chris Orr next to Scooby Wright, that's gonna be tough to deal with. And then you got, your edge rushers. You start putting together the secondary, and yeah, they're gonna be good again. They're gonna, Skip Holtz is doing a great job down there. Obviously, 2 championship wins. They've been dominant. Yeah, they're gonna be good again.
Well, and I would say it's just, at least if you have your money lines going here on the opening day kickoff game,
minus 250.
Well, I mean, the Stallions had a slightly more dominant kind of a championship run here than the Renegades did, and obviously we had all of that, and with with the losing records going into the playoffs, all that stuff. I mean, Renegades, when they needed to be done, and they won and everything, but like Stallions had a little bit more gusto going into that championship game than the other did. So. Anything else on that? We want to move down defenders here.
We can move to defenders. Let's do it.
All right. So let's see here. You can see again, picking up some, from Houston, Seattle, all of that. Initial thoughts, kind of names glancing down on here.
Jordan Evans. That's a nice pickup from Seattle. That's going to help DC a lot. I like Elijah Blades as well out of Houston. I watched him when he was at Buffalo. He was an SEC guy that transferred to the MAC. George Moore is a really nice pickup. That's another Seattle offensive lineman. Trent Harris, he had a good year with Houston last year. I think that's going to be helpful for them. Let's see. Ooh, DeAndre Francois got picked up. That's interesting. So DC looks like looking for a backup quarterback, goes with Francois. I'm assuming that Tyamu is on this list as well.
I thought there was the whole deal with Tiamu where he's still like under futures, right, or something with the NFL.
He might be. I don't know.
I think Mike Mitchell had that out that he wasn't. He's still working around before coming back.
Interesting. Okay, so Francois. Oh boy, Francois might be. I don't see it. Is there another quarterback on this list?
I'd have to see here. Let me. I'm searching on another one so I don't get it. Yeah, no, that's currently the only one. Now, obviously, this will be opened up to the others, but yeah, Fan Control Football is DeAndre Francois, right?
I mean, you're a DC guy, aren't you? Aren't you a Defenders guy?
No, I'm a command. No, I'm a Commanders guy.
Well, I know you're a Commanders guy, but yeah, Seattle's gone, man. So you got to pick one, right?
We're all in with the Brahmas. I've said that publicly.
Brahmas, okay.
AJ Smith has my full support. AJ Smith and Wade Phillips and all of that. So I got the fallback from Wade Phillips on Twitter. So yeah, we're all in with the Brahmas. Riverwalk tours. We'll be doing the whole thing. But and Pat's staying on here as well. Yeah, no, the only So Francois right now, the only one. That's interesting.
Yeah, that is. I like Taquarius Tisdale. It's on that list. He's a linebacker, kind of an edge rusher. I liked him a lot when he came out as well, out of Ole Miss. This is kind of, and I want to say this nicely, this is probably one of the more underwhelming rosters that we've seen so far. When you look at those first couple teams and the pickups that they brought in, Donovan Jeter's going to help a little bit. Defensive tackle out of Michigan, played with Houston last year. That's going to help a little bit. But overall, it's this one to me is a little bit underwhelming, especially with the quarterback situation. They're going to have to figure that out throughout the process. Abram Smith coming back is going to be helpful for the run game. I do like Sanogo on there, out of the linebacker out of Louisville. That was a guy I really liked out of college as well. It's just, I could kind of see it. Tim Ward had a good year with Houston. He had a couple good games, but had a couple games where he was also kind of gone and missing. It's tough, man. It's tough. When you got a quarterback question hanging over your head, oh, man.
Well, and especially when you have Like this would be the time to at least get one in to kind of protect. And obviously you can bring in to kind of do whatever. I'm seeing if Mike or anyone has anything saying in the group chat about all this stuff. Cause Francois right now leading the DC Defenders is a little scary. I think if you're a Bears fan,
Von Hutchins is their
yeah.
director of player personnel. Von's going to do a good job. I have no doubt about that. It's just, man, I don't know. I don't know, man.
Yeah, and Mike's saying there's clarifying here, like there's all these steps where like you had to be on the team or had to sign the letter of intent and all this stuff to kind of get into this. So this isn't like a final list of all these names,
right.
But just off first blush, this is a bulk of I think the roster building at this point. So it is a little bit disconcerting at that point. But like you said, Von Hutchins, like a lot of faith and belief in there, but certainly interesting thus far.
Yeah, no, I'll have to see the rest of the rosters.
We'll see the rest, and we'll do a big because I know Coach Craig Sports was interested in this as well. We'll do a big roundtable kind of once this is all alive and finalized here after the 15th, and obviously there'll still be supplemental drafts and all that. We'll kind of figure out a time to do a big roundtable with all of that. Now we have the Roughnecks, which is actually the Gamblers, which was interesting, and I know Mike had put out, and the league had told him, and then it ended up like which conference were they drafting from? But here we have the Roughnecks pulling out of the former USFL teams. Gamblers, not maybe the prettiest team in the world, and I know Anthony Miller spent many weekends covering them. Any thoughts on this thus far? Kenji Bahar still sticking around. I see some of these names on here. What do you make of this?
So the first thing is look at all of, at least in this top section of the roster, look at all of the players that they picked up. Like this feels like they drafted a few extra, and it may be because they just didn't have a lot of guys, and it looks like they were trying to get everybody to a certain number of players. So they got a few extra picks, and you could see that already. First off, I see a lot of Pitt defenders, New Jersey defenders, New Jersey offense as well. Let's see, Reuben Foster. That's your defensive star of your league. Had a really great year with Pitt last year. For a former first-round NFL draft pick, that's huge for them. That's going to help them at least shore up the middle of their defense. He had a really good year with Pitt last year. Adam Rodriguez from Philadelphia is there. That's going to be a good pickup. Yeah, Sagapolo. He's there. That's a good one.
We have the
Ethan Westbrooks,
the illustrious Mark Thompson. I always got to make sure when you talk, you can't talk UFL without talking about Mark Thompson.
Yep. So Mark is constantly involved on social media. Absolutely.
Mark, log on, go, walk the dog.
With Ethan Westbrooks is going to be fun, because he had a really good year a couple of good years with the Generals. On the interior of that defensive line and putting them with Reggie Walker on the outside and some of these other guys that are going to be there. That's going to be fun. Isaiah Chambers is back. That's going to be a good help as well. That's a developmental prospect he's still got a chance to play in the NFL. But yeah, it's interesting because again, going back to the quarterback deal, right? Because that was what I was talking about is, Kenji Bahar had a decent year. They figured out a good way to use him and to get stuff. I think wasn't Houston the team that played Pittsburgh in the playoffs? Is that right?
It's a fever dream at this point.
Maybe it wasn't Pittsburgh. It wasn't Pittsburgh, but I think they played Birmingham in the playoffs. I could be wrong about that. But Bahar, he's an athlete. He's an athlete. And so it's interesting to see Jared Garantano on this list. He spent 4 years at the University of Tennessee. Transferred to Washington State as a grad transfer, and he's interesting, because as a Tennessee fan, I'm sitting here wearing the Tennessee hat, got Tennessee shit behind me, we didn't like Jarrett. Let's put it that way. He's got some inconsistency, but he's a better ball thrower than Bahar is, and maybe not as good of an athlete. So that's an interesting situation to see. The running backs on this team look awesome. Tion Evans is a really great running back. That's another former Tennessee guy, transferred to Louisville, was at the NFL Combine last year. So Tion Evans is a good one to see on the list. Shamari Jones had a good career at Coastal Carolina. Mark Thompson's back. I don't know how involved he'll be next year, but we'll see. And then you see them loading up with their big personnel. Like there's 3 tight ends that they picked here. Braden Bowman, Woody Branham, both played extensive time at New Jersey. Ryan Izzo they added from Philadelphia. They're loading up for big personnel. So it looks like quarterback for them is not a huge deal because they're loading up with run. They're going to run the football. And they've got some good personnel now to do that. So especially adding Robert Myers too. Robert Myers is a good pickup from the Generals as well. Yeah, they're gonna be able to run the ball. I don't know how well they're gonna be able to throw it. They don't run the
ball. Did you? What did you make of non-football aside? What did you make of the Houston adopting the Roughnecks branding? Because to me, I'm a big fan of like the weird helmet and everything. To me, that was some of the cleanest branding last year. What did you think of that? We're adopting the Roughnecks branding here.
I think that was the holdup with the merger, right?
Yeah,
because the XFL. I think the XFL had to feel like they were on top, right? When you have those kind of investors, you've got The Rock, you got Danny Garcia, you got Redbird Capital. They got to feel like that they're coming out on top, and this seemed to be the thing that got them there, right? We're going to retain 5 of our franchises, even if we don't keep the team together. I think the Roughnecks also did better in terms of fan attendance and different stuff. Probably had something to do with Houston not playing in Houston.
Yeah.
So at least you've got a team, that's already that people are familiar with, and that they've been watching for the last couple of years. The Roughnecks were obviously in the first XFL edition, came back the second time, so there's good stuff there. Overall, it is interesting that they decided to take the Gamblers team and put it under and rename them the Roughnecks, especially when you had the Roughnecks last year that weren't terrible. It's interesting. It is interesting. I'm not sure if it's I don't think it's a bad thing. I just,
I've had a
lot of. It seemed like that was the thing to get it done, to get the merger done.
Yeah, I've had a lot of people like, oh, it doesn't matter. Because again, we have a lot of college football fans like, oh, it doesn't matter. And all that. Like, this guy right here, I'm a Brandon Silvers man. Like, and if I bought season tickets, I'm going to go see Brandon Silvers. Now, Kenji Bahar, like, that's my quarterback. I mean, I'm just saying, like, it's not old Ironside there, and this is a different world we live in. So I don't gamblers are weird. I think Anthony Miller had said, like, if their season 1 offense with their season 2 defense, or if they kind of flip the two kind of whatever together, like maybe they'll finally get it figured out this season. But right now, like you said, pretty run heavy and nothing else really standing out from that.
Yeah, and I think they're going to be able to play defense too. It looks like they just drafted a lot of people, so that's the most interesting thing to me is how many they were able to pick up, and that's going to help them, I think, overall in the long grand scheme of things.
So the Showboats here, right? Flip's here as the head coach now on here. A little bit of moving and shaking there, but I thought the Showboats did good last year. I liked kind of the branding and the rolling that out, and it looked good. Thoughts on the initial Showboats, because they were right. They were peaking near the end of the season, right? They did all right.
Well, here's going to the quarterback situation. Case Cookus. So what does that tell you about how they felt about Cole Kelly?
Yep.
So I don't blame him. Cole Kelly's still on the list, which is good. And then you got Ryan Willis, who's there as well. But they went and they got Case Cookus. So, and they've got another quarterback, Guy Myers, out of Charleston, West Virginia. Interesting. But yeah, no, Case Cookus is there. So that's your star quarterback, right? Case did a really good job playing with Philadelphia over the last couple of years. Playoff appearance, the championship appearance, lost to Birmingham year 1. Philadelphia got beat up last year pretty good.
Yeah, I think Case got his ass beat. Yeah,
yeah, no protection whatsoever. So I think that's going to be a welcome sign for Case. I think he's going to feel a lot better about the offensive line he's about to be playing for here. If you look at who they drafted, it looks like they feel really good about their offensive line too, which is interesting. Because look at the draft. Do you see any? There's one guy in this upper part of the roster where they drafted. It's a guard, Kirk Kelly from New Orleans. Everybody else that they're picking, defense. Running back Kennedy Brooks. There's a tackle Terry Poole from Pitt, but There's a tackle, Sidney Wells from New Orleans, but no real big players here, right? In terms of the offensive line, no big names, no names that stand out, from last year. Darius Victor, that's gonna be a nice little pickup there from the Generals. So you add that to Case Cookus, that's gonna be fun. Vinny Papali had a really good year with Cookus. Overton, really good year with Cookus. So you're bringing in a lot of familiarity, and it looks like you're feeling really good about your offensive line that you already have. And now you're just adding the complementary pieces to it. So whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, I guess we'll find out.
Yeah, Sage Surratt on here
Sage
as well.
Surratt,
It's good. I don't know. I mean, Memphis to me was kind of hard to kind of gauge last year, and the USFL season was. Yeah, well, and it was just tricky. Like, we're getting through the XFL, and God bless Pat and doing the shows every week with me, and we're trying to kind of, it was a little bit of a trudge through the end of the season, kind of getting through all that. So I am excited to see kind of have these worlds interact. It's like not having separate TV shows you got to keep track of here. I am looking forward to what obviously we wish more than 8, but exciting to kind of see all these worlds collide on here. See, so Flip coming over here, obviously Todd Haley moving on. So we'll see kind of how that goes with him inheriting this, but certainly picking up some pieces. Like you said, Case Cookus had a down year, I would say, last year, just from getting beat up so much, but certainly looking to bounce back because I don't know other options he has at this point, right?
And they're bringing familiarity to him too. Yeah. That's the other thing. And that's more important than most people realize, right? Because to be familiar with the guys that you're throwing to, a lot of your concepts and different things that you run, especially in a Wade type offense, Wade Phillips, what he's going to bring in, what he wants to install, it's a lot of timing concepts. That takes time to build, right? Because you got to understand how my guy moves, how he runs his route, how quick he is. Because the whole point of a timing route is getting the ball to a certain place because your player's going to be there when you throw that ball. So Case is really good with the timing routes. That's his strength, right? He's got a really decent arm. He can push the ball down the field, no doubt. But timing and hitting those throws in rhythm, that's what he does really well. So to bring in familiarity, guys that he's worked with, guys that he's had success with, guys that he's thrown the ball to really well is absolutely key to his success. And that's what they're trying to set up here. And then Sage Surratt, again, tight end to move from wide receiver. Didn't play much the first year. Came in, played a lot more with New Orleans last year, had a good year. That's going to be a nice pickup for them. And they're trying to bolster their run game. You bring in Victor. That's a huge help. You bring in Kennedy Brooks. That's, an opposite player of Victor. That's a big bruising running back. So, there's some good stuff that they're doing here. Absolutely.
Just to clarify, so we're kind of in our group chat here. Mike was talking about we had questions about Teamu with the Defenders, and he's apparently going to be a free agent because he's not, I guess, hadn't signed the LOI to return in 2024, so wasn't protected by DC. So he could still certainly sign back with DC, but it seems like he could be a little bit more of a free agent. So just kind of keeping track of notes on here as we go through. Panthers on here, decent season 1, right? What was it? They finally won at home. I'm trying to remember all the storylines from the season. Didn't do well. We had the Tony Scotts of the world and kind of everyone following the Panthers kind of return to Detroit. Mike Nolan, right? Helming that. What do we think here coming down the pike? Excuse me. I got to go cough.
It's interesting because you got Danny Etling and Brian Lewerke that was on the roster. And now you're adding Davis Cheek. Quarterback from Elon, who was with the Breakers last year, didn't play much. That's interesting. I like the addition of Wes Hills, who was the Breakers running back last year. He had a really good start to the year before they slowed him down a little bit. That's a nice. Matthew Colburn as well.
Yep.
So it looks like that Michigan is trying to load up for a run. Donis Alexander, that's another good addition. He's had 2 really good years with the Breakers.
Good to see Brock Miller on here coming from the Generals. Always happy to see friend of the show there, Brock Miller.
Yep. It's good to see him. Nasir Player, that's a nice pickup. He was probably the best edge rusher Pitt had last year. Ryan Pope is probably was the best offensive lineman on the Philadelphia team. If that's not saying too much, but still. Yep, Jordan Sewell. That's going to help. That's going to help a little bit there. Terry Wright is interesting. The wide receiver out of Purdue. Yeah.
It's so funny.
They're loading up a run, man. That's what they're doing here.
It's just funny going through this because I get a lot of, XFL flack. Like I recognize for whatever, because I'm, you're the football guy. And Pat sent over I was going to say this too off the top. Pat Ruffino was on like Reddit the other day, and there was people talking about all the different podcasts, right? And like what Mark's doing, what Brandon's doing, and the Markcast, and they go like, I really like the Markcast because of like the analysis that they do, which obviously is a credit to the people that come on, like you and everyone, like Pat and everyone for sharing that. But I appreciated that because I'm not the football guy. But when I can sit here and I can kind of pinpoint these names on here, I feel better about that, or at least like, hey, I'm doing my part covering the USFL.
Yeah, no, and we've been watching these pretty obsessively, the last couple of years. So some of these names, you certainly hope start to fill in. The last one that popped, I missed it initially, is Corey Coleman. Yeah. So I know that they're adding guys that had some decent production at the wide receiver position, but they're loading up a run. Like these offensive linemen that they're Drew Himmelman that they picked up, he's a run blocker, right tackle run blocker. They already got Jared Horst, run blocker. Noah Johnson, Kansas State, run blocker. I mean, like they're loading up for run. Michigan's probably like, you know what? We've had issues with our quarterbacks the last couple of years. Let's run the ball. Let's run the damn ball.
Yeah, it's like you said with Cheek on here, Etling, and then Lewerke kind of figuring out what to do with quarterback, right? Lewerke was with the spring league, right? And then I think he had a cup of coffee with
the Patriots.
Yeah, I knew he was on with that. So, how are you feeling decent about that, or do you think they stop here, or are you still making moves?
No, they're gonna figure out somebody else.
Okay, so
but all three of these guys have athletic ability that they can run the ball. So I think that you might see a switch here. They were running more of a traditional power offense, trying to throw in a few wrinkles, with Joe Walker and that trying to use the athletic ability, try to get him to space. The big thing that they're looking at right here, though, is it looks like they're going to switch to a heavy RPO look, run pass option. So because Davis Cheek, Danny Etling, and Brian Lewerke are all guys that run the ball. They're not great, but they can do it. So if you run an RPO system, that's what's going to open up your shots here for, the wide receivers that they've added. Slants, bubbles, different stuff like that. A go ball every once in a while. That's why you bring in a Corey Coleman. It looks like that's what they're gearing up for. Is it going to be more heavy RPO?
Well, there you go. Let's slide on down here. The Brahmas on here. Jack Cohn making it back on here. Matthew McKay.
Benkert too.
I know. I was trying to figure out him on the list here. This is fun getting to go through this. No prep, real time. So just keep that in mind. John's breaking this. We're just God forbid, you get this ahead of time and do a little research, but it's good. I think John's obviously doing a phenomenal job. Real time. Yeah. Benkert coming back. Interesting. And then got hurt. And I did not like how Kurt handled everything in this time with the XFL last year, but glad to see him not hurt. And I obviously think he's a polarizing figure, kind of lightning spark, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no. And it, again, goes back to social media, right? Social media is really good at making you a polarizing person, especially when you talk a lot. Tavante Beckett, that's a fun one to add right there from Houston. He's a good linebacker. I don't know if he played as much with Houston last year, but I watched him a lot at Marshall when he came out. He was a guy that I really liked. He was an undersized linebacker. That's why he didn't really make the NFL. And other additions.
Cody Latimer's sitting around here. I don't think that's
that's it might help. They got him listed as a tight end too, which is interesting. Mosley, Jalen Samuels. That could be a nice little piece from Houston. I don't remember him playing with Houston that much either, but he played a couple of years in the NFL. Most of these picks are from Houston. Holy cow. Look at them all.
Well, because you figure, right, if you're Wade Phillips coming in, if you're coming into the Brahmas, you're bringing in a lot of your you want to bring over as many as you can. So But but like obviously Kurt was with the Brahmas, the Heinz Ward Brahmas. So like we get the Kurt, we get some of this from the Heinz Ward Brahmas, and then we get some of the Wade Phillips coming in. So yeah, kind of a mixed moshing of all of that. Are you sad to see Heinz go? With Phillips and AJ Smith coming in? Are you sad to see Heinz Ward out of the XFL?
I think Heinz is a really good guy.
Yep.
I think he learned a lot as a coach last year, but when you're condensing this league down to 8 teams, he just didn't make the cut. Yep. He might be able to someday. I don't believe he had a lot of coaching experience, anyways. Yeah. Even as a coordinator, I don't think he really had any. So it was kind of surprising to see him when he got that spot. That was kind of one of those hires where he felt like that might be more for the name brand and the connections that he brings. Which he did. He did a good job bringing in people. But San Antonio was. I was saying that I think before we even got started, I was looking at the roster, going, "How are they this bad?" When you look at the talent that they have, they got some pieces.
Well, and when you had the Elizondo, we demoted him during the season, and we were dealing with kind of all that stuff. I think there was a lot of moving pieces there. Yeah. Foosball fan here in the chat said, "I'll trust whoever AJ wants in San Antonio." I mean, you made Brandon Silvers look like the greatest quarterback in the league last year for at least a few weeks.
Yeah, no, and that was surprising. Austin Edwards will be a nice little pickup from Houston, but Fair State, he had a decent year with Houston last year. I think when you get down to toward the bottom of the roster on the alphabetical list here, there are a couple that were also starting to pop out a little bit. So Tease Tabor, that was a higher draft pick when he came out of Florida a couple years ago. People liked him a lot. I mean, it's interesting to see him down here at this level. Kevin Tolliver had a pretty good year last year. Teron Vincent, interesting because that's actually the former head of the NFLPA's son. He played defensive tackle for Ohio State. Cade Warner is another interesting one. That's Kurt Warner's son, as in the former Super Bowl winning quarterback. So he's there. These are guys, both of those. So Teron and Cade both came out and tried to enter the NFL last year. And so here they are going into this league. That's interesting. CJ Windham is a very interesting prospect out of Middle Tennessee State. He might be a sleeper here. And I know that he's already on the roster. He's not coming in from anywhere. He might be a sleeper here. He might be a guy to keep an eye on. And then Quincy Wilson from Florida, another DB from Florida. Quincy Wilson's pretty good for this level. They got him listed as a DB. He's probably going to play like nickel and a little bit of safety. But that's a good pickup for them. So there's some stuff to work with here. And obviously Wade, defensive guy, loves his defense. He's got some really good defensive pieces to play with. As people would like to joke, he's got some toys in the closet. It's gonna be fun. They might be pretty decent actually and pretty competitive, as long as the quarterback situation is figured out.
What was I gonna say here? You got Nick Hawley as well sticking around. Some of the the twins there. I will say, the great irony would be if Kurt Benkirk was my quarterback, because before he got hurt, we were very in our group chat. I renamed this as an anti-Kurt Benkirk group chat, and then he got hurt, and obviously we were pro all that. So it would be the great irony would be if he comes back with the Brahmas, and that's my quarterback. We'll have to ride or die. Hey, I've had worse.
Yeah, Jack Cohn, if he's the competition, I think with the quarterbacks too, there's going to be some names that are going to come available, and they're going to add them, and so I think that the quarterbacks are still being figured out right now.
The other interesting thing, just while I'm thinking about it, because obviously, like Kurt being on here, is protected, but that doesn't necessarily mean like he's playing or whatever. I'll be curious, knowing that the XFL was paying the quarterbacks a lot more last season than the USFL. Like, are you still attracting those big names if you're the UFL now? If you're only getting paid, $55,000 versus, like Brett Huntley was getting whatever, like 200 or 300,000. Yeah. Like it was, and I think that was self-reported, or I think Brian Scott was the one that put that out. But like, I'll just be curious. Are we getting current?
It was a paid by game, and I don't think he played a lot of games at the end, so I don't think he ended up seeing that money. But it was a situation where if he played, he got paid, and it was a good game check.
Okay. So it'd just be interesting. I'm just saying, like, even if some of these names are on here, like, I don't know, I don't know if Kurt or whatever is going to be back for that, for the amount of money now that the UFL is going to pay versus whatever.
We're gonna find
Uh,
out.
just speaking of, and we'll get to the next list here, and we'll get out. Pat just shared this in the thing. Toby Johnson, I just woke up to 100 text messages about being drafted to Houston. I promise I haven't spoken to anyone from that organization. I find it weird that no one reached out to me for each team in December not to draft me. Well, that's beside the point. But again, like finding out, we didn't want to do it. We didn't want to do the big thing Friday. We didn't want people like, there are different ways to handle this. And I had tweeted out on Friday, like, I hear a lot. Reed, we just need to get through like this. Let us just sit through this draft, and then we're doing that. I'm like, I just don't know how many times like there's only one dispersal draft. Like, unless you guys are merging again here in 15 years, like I just don't understand. Anyway, that's the end of my rant with that. But we're still having players find out right now and via our stream and others like, oh wow, I was drafted on here.
Yeah, that's a fun way to find out, right? Oh hey, the Mark cast. Oh, there's my name.
St. Louis here. I think Coach Becht here, big talking. I saw a lot of cryptic tweets on Friday from him. You got a lot to live up to here. Didn't quite have the playoff run maybe that they wanted, and I know that I think came out that they've changed the playoff rulings now, where it's going to be the top seed from each conference and then the top two records after that. I think trying to remedy kind of his pissy pants party he had before, tweeting, well, I'm on the couch, I'm not in the playoffs. And I tweeted out like, well, I'm in Audi Field right now watching the Sea Dragons play.
What
do you, because the Battlehawks are really good here. So what do we make of this? I got to kind of figure out this list here.
Well, so the first thing is they got a hold of some guys before this happened, right? So that's good. That's one of the keys. They added Max Borgi from Houston. He played down there, and he's kind of a poor man's Christian McCaffrey, right? Like the UFL version of Christian McCaffrey. That's really what he is. And then I think there was a defender that they added as well that was really good last year. Do you remind me? Do you remember who it was?
Sorry, what's your question? I was reading the chat.
It was they added a defender as well that was a big name from the XFL last year. They got a hold of him before this draft.
I don't know. I'm sorry.
Yeah, there were two guys that they got a hold of. And I know Borgi was one. I can't remember who the other one was. But anyways, so interesting thing here. Look at how few picks there are compared to some of these other teams.
And I mean, they must have been pretty bolstered going in, right? And not as many spots to fill. Because I think they could go up to 20. I think it was up to 20 picks.
So Quinterio Cole, that's a good addition for them. He'll be playing some safety. Might be able to play corner. We'll see. Good pickup from Seattle. Antoine Jackson is a good pickup as well. I liked him a lot. Ja'Cour Pearson. There you go.
Yeah.
Wide receiver. Slot wide receiver.
Going from Seattle, yeah.
Yep. Had a really good year last year with Seattle. And actually, didn't he get the opportunity because he was like doing those YouTube? He won this YouTube competition with that guy that goes around and does the wide receiver versus DB competitions. I can't think of his name, but he was like, they had him on the XFL broadcast that one day.
Yeah, was it Destroying? Are you
Destroying?
Talking Destroying?
Yeah, him. Yeah. Didn't Pearson literally get the opportunity because he did one of those videos?
Possibly. I don't know. I try to avoid all things Destroying in my life. So
I think that was part of it. But he also ran like a 4.240 at one of the XFL Pro days. So absolute blazer. I was looking because I was trying to figure out why is this guy not in the NFL? He ran a 4.5 on his pro day. So he came into the XFL and ran a 4.2, and they were like, yeah, we're keeping him. But yeah, that's going to be a nice addition here. The big question I think that's going to be is who's going to end up playing quarterback, because AJ McCarron is with the Bengals right now. So Nick Tiano's on the list and Manny Wilkins on the list. That's going to be interesting to see. Do they get him back? McCarron from Cincinnati to Cincinnati, let him go at the end of the year. Donovan West is a good pickup, center from Arizona State. Really liked him coming out. Michael Wright is a good corner addition. He's sort of a match 4 corner. Jack Snyder's a good pickup. there's some good pickups here. But again, this is a team that was really good. They kept a lot of their talent, considering all things, from NFL, picking them apart. And I'm not a betting man in these lower leagues because it's just too volatile.
Too much, yeah.
But I might go with if I see a plus 600 odds for St. Louis to win the championship, I might take that.
I will tell you, the Battlehawks versus the Stallions, kind of in the one ring to rule them all, would be pretty exciting here. If you want to have that on that. I understand the Renegades as the defending champions is sexy for the kickoff, but Battlehawks have the more fervent fan base. No disrespect to the Arlington Renegades out there.
That would have been interesting for sure, but here we are.
Yeah, Foosball Fan has a comment, and if we'll get out of here. If you have any questions for John, we'll kind of do just overarching here before we get out. And then if you have any specific questions, let me know for John, and we can do those before we get out. But I don't want this to be 8 hours. I think this is good. Like get in and out. The people are trying to get all the results on here. Foosball Fans, and something weird is going on with the QBs. Yeah, I think there's a lot of moving parts there. Where you have guys still on NFL rosters, or maybe you have guys that hadn't committed yet, or like I said, just game check wise, if you're not getting paid the same that you were, maybe Tamu doesn't want to come back if it's only for kind of that standard rate. That is the one thing now with merging these leagues and having to deal with that. So,
and those are the questions we don't have answers to yet, right? Is how much they're being paid. So that's going to be a huge part of quarterbacks. Quarterbacks always get more money, right? Like they just about always get more money. They're separate because of I guess you could say the importance of the position overall. Any level that you look at, quarterbacks always get more money. I mean, college football, NIL right now, quarterbacks get more money. NFL, quarterback's the highest paid position. So you're always going to get more money as a quarterback because of the importance that you have to the offense. The quarterback situations for these teams are not final. I think that's very clear, right? You got one roster on there that's got one quarterback right now, and they drafted him, right? That's not going to stay that way. So there's going to be a lot of talking behind the scenes, trying to gauge interest, see what's going on. We know Bethel Thompson's going back to McLeod. He's going back to Canada, so he's going to the Elks.
Crazy, $500K to go back. I think that is the biggest. I think that's a big mistake. If I'm the Edmonton Elks, not that anyone, I'm not the director of a GM up there, but I will say
they're kind of desperate right now. I think, right, because they just had a really bad year, and they need all the help they can get. Bringing a veteran quarterback. At the very worst, you're going to have a guy that can mentor the young quarterbacks that you bring in.
Yeah.
Very worst. So I don't know if it's worth $500,000 with the way that the Canadian League salary operates, but it's worth bringing in that guy for that, especially if you think he can play a full year. And he's had success up there, so we'll see. It'll be interesting. He had success with the USFL.
Oh, he was good. I mean, they were undefeated until he came on my podcast, and then they couldn't win again. But it is interesting.
You screwed him over, Reed. Golly, it's all your fault.
But the idea, McLeod, purposely he willingly took that pay decrease to go to the USFL, right? Like they paid him the standard salary that everyone else got there, and so that is something where. Now if you have, like I said before, you have some of these quarterbacks coming in. So you're high on Battlehawks, you're high on the Stallions. Any other teams you're high on here as we kind of round this out?
I do like San Antonio. I'll be honest with you. I like San Antonio. I think that they look like they have the pieces to really put the run together. And then I kind of liked Michigan. I think they got to get their quarterback situation figured out, but I kind of like Michigan. They've been quietly the last couple of years stacking some talent together, right? And we saw a big step up in their play from the season 1 to season 2. It's difficult because I don't know if I'm supposed to tell this story. I'm gonna tell this story anyways. Reed, when the initial quarterback draft of the USFL, they had the number 1 overall pick. Remember Michigan? They wanted to take who was in that draft? They want to take one of the other quarterbacks.
Well, Shea went number 1, but Scott was in there.
Who went 2? Do you remember? Was it Tamu?
Yeah.
So I think they wanted Tiamu, and they said no. He's going to Tampa with Haley. And they're like, all right, well then we want Brian Scott, and they said no, he's going number 3 to Philadelphia. And they're like, what, do we have the number 1 pick? Like,
Yeah.
what are we supposed to do? So that was sort of a weird setup when the USFL set all that up. Yeah. So it was Tiamu that they wanted, and then they wanted Brian Scott, and then they were told they couldn't have him. That was what it was.
That's awesome.
They were told they couldn't have. They have the number 1 pick, but they can't have these 2 guys. Like, they were very confused about that. But so that's the thing is, they've had quarterback issues the last couple of years. They took a chance last year bringing in Carson Strong, who was a pretty good prospect at the NFL level. He just had terrible medicals. His knees were so messed up, the NFL was afraid to touch him. And what happened? Comes to USFL, messed his knees up even more. Now he's not playing. He's not ever going to play again. So they've had issues with the quarterback position. They've had talent on the team. I think it was Michigan. It was Michigan that played Pittsburgh in the playoff game, right? So this past year. So they went from being the worst team in the league to playing in the playoff. And it was a relatively competitive game against Pittsburgh. It came down to the end. I remember now. So that's a step up. If they could get their quarterback situation figured out this year, they could coax somebody. Hey, come on over. Let's play. Let's work this stuff out. Michigan's going to be really good. Because they've had the talent, they've had the defense, they have the receivers to work with, they got an offensive line. They've just had subpar quarterback play. And when they took Shea Patterson, that was a shock. Being an analyst, not knowing what was going on behind the scenes at the time, that was a shock because it was like, I'll watch this motherfucker over there at the Senior Bowl. Right?
You can't say that on here,
Oh,
John.
my bad. Sorry. My bad. Sorry. I watched this dude at the Senior Bowl, and he couldn't hit the broadside of a barn. It was terrible. It was one of the worst quarterback performances I'd ever seen in my life. And I was like, I don't know how that's going to work. So.
It's interesting on here. I don't know, a lot of politics. I'll be curious if the allure of playing in all the markets outweighs kind of the contract issues here with the USFL teams going in this year. Because I think hey, come play in the hub or we're coming be in Canton. They're like, do you feel like you get more benefit now, get more exposure, kind of that playing in the home markets and on the Fox and ABC and everything versus like, okay, well, I'm not getting paid as much, but at least I feel like this is a bigger platform. At least they're telling me it's a bigger platform in the commercials I'm watching.
So I think between the 2 leagues this year, we had 80 to 90 guys get called up, right? That's going to be condensed now, right?
Yeah.
So the numbers are going to look better. And that's going to help your recruiting and be like, hey, we put next year, assuming you get through this year, you get to the end of it, hey, we put 80, 90 guys in the NFL. We gave all these guys different opportunities. The calendar still works because they're going to start the end of March, which means they're going to play through to about June. So you're still going to be able to join in time for training camp. That's going to help too, right? Because we talked about the calendar a lot last year and the difference between the two. And how the XFL set it up really well because their season was ending as you were going into rookie mini camps. So, in theory, you could sign with the team and go into rookie mini camp, which is a huge, huge benefit, right? Because there's a lot of installs and a lot of different things that are run in rookie mini camp. So, basic stuff. It's nice to have that base knowledge going into training camp because that helps you, in terms of understanding what the scheme is, what you're going to be asked to do. So that's a huge plus, I think. You're not going to be in time for rookie mini camp with this calendar. You're going to be in time for training camp, so that's going to help. Whereas you had the USFL pushing people in the middle of training camp, which is not helpful, unless there's an injury, and so you're basically playing for an injury, which is not what you want to be doing.
Yeah.
So this is going to give guys better opportunities. So that's going to be good. And then you're going to have the 80, 90 guys that are condensed into this league that are going to go to the next level. And then I think it's going to help Canada a little bit too, because Canada's been really worried about pulling talent, right? And all those general managers have been trying to figure out ways to attract American talent to Canada, right? And so there's been a lot of conversations that have been had about how do we get that? How do we accomplish that? What do we do? Like, what do we have to do that's different? This condensing from 16 to 8 teams is going to help them, right? Because now you have more talent. There's less positions available down here. People are going to be more inclined to go to Canada. So I think that helps them too. And the calendar works out for them as well. So you got a guy that was a backup in this league all year. He wants to go play in Canada. He might be able to and get up there in time to start the season.
Yeah, I wish they didn't make it so hard for that transition up there. It's so funny, and like I've had on the CFL guys, it's like it takes you 4 years to figure out our game. It's like, well, okay, maybe you could help facilitate that a little bit. Maybe don't make it such like the fraternity of kind of breaking into this and going through the onboarding. Like I think they could do a better job. Yes, I think it was the Calgary Stampede. Dave Dickinson, I think, had the quote that was talking about like, oh, it certainly helps us now having only 8 teams in the States versus 16, I think came out this week.
And that's the funny thing too about the CFL is it is a different game, right? Because you've got a bigger field, you got bigger end zones, you got 12 men on the field, you got running starts as wide receivers. There's some crazy stuff, right? When you compare it to American football, it looks very different. So, the one thing that when I was talking with CFL scouts and stuff, went to the Tropical Bowl last year, met up with a lot of the guys from Montreal. Congrats to Montreal, by the way. So excited. I was so excited when I saw that they pulled that off. That was amazing. It was an amazing run at the end of the year. Montreal, these guys, they have a really great scouting staff. And so being able to chat with them and talk with them, we were talking about the differences between American football and Canadian football, and speed is king, right? Speed is king because the field's bigger, and the faster you can get to a spot, the better. And so having 8 less teams is going to help push some of that speed up there. It really is. Not everybody's speed is a good thing, and obviously at our level, here in America. I mean, if you watch the Miami Dolphins play the Buffalo Bills last night, you can see why speed is threatening, right? Because Miami is the fastest team in the NFL in terms of the amount of players that they have that can run like sub 4.40s. Like they're absolutely insane with how many guys they have that can do that. And they were missing a couple guys last night, Jalen Waddle and Raheem Mostert. And those guys both run sub 4.40s. We don't know officially with Waddle because he was hurt when he came out. But Mostert ran a 4.35. Tyreek's like a 4.2 guy. A-Chain's a 4.3 guy. Like, it's just, you see what speed does, right? You can see how that's a threat to a defense and how difficult it is to contain it. So in Canada, it's an even bigger deal to have speed. It's going to help. It's going to help them too. So I think everybody in the long run is happy about it, except for the players that were on those teams that don't make the cut.
Well, I think we'll kind of round out here. It'll be exciting. The next, like I said, I think the 15th is the next step here, and they'll kind of be open season now. If you want to draft from whatever, you kind of fill out the rosters, and then God knows, because there was all these plans of the supplemental and all this, but now I think there's this. Everything changed. I remember we had like Russ Giglio on back during the summer. It's like, well, we're going to do this and we're going to do this, and then you're like, spoiler alert, like this is happening. All crazy. So. But I appreciate it. Like I said, a lot of information today to go on. I think we had like 100 people watching here at 7 a.m, which is always cool. So I appreciate that. Obviously, like and subscribe on all of this stuff and all of John's stuff and the Sick Podcast and everything with that. Give a thumbs up on this video. We still have like 70 something people. So thumbs up, and make sure this gets shared kind of throughout the day. I'll keep posting that, but good little stop at here to get all that stuff out. We will be, like I said, John, hopefully God willing, we'll be back. We'll do some sort of roundtable panel, something with Coach Craig. And if Evan wants to be on, or Pat or anyone else, but John was obviously very willing to hop on today and do all this stuff. We'll be at the kickoff game. Like and subscribe. If we hit 3,500 by the time we make it there, win your free tickets. Otherwise, we'll figure it out for the championship. But like and subscribe. A lot of work goes in, and I appreciate John coming on. John, anything you want to plug? Anything else from you?
Yeah, so Sick Podcast, Draft Vogel. We've been having a blast with it, dude. We got a really nice lineup this week. So last week, we hit on Cam Ward in that situation. We had a trivia night, actually, where we talked about the NFL draft, had some NFL draft trivia. Pick your brain, see how much you know about the draft. And then, today we've got an episode dropping where we're talking more about, some really deep level base analytics, I guess you could say. Mark Jarvis, we added on the show. If you're familiar with Mark Jarvis at Jarvis Scouting, he is really into process and the different ways that you can look at building a team, right? And eliminating biases and different stuff. He's been a great addition to our show. We added him a couple of months ago. And this week, we're going to have Austin Reed, the Western Kentucky quarterback, come on. We're going to have Cole Godbout on next week with us, the defensive tackle from Wyoming. We're going to look at the Senior Bowl tomorrow. Is going to drop their underclassmen. This is the first year in All-Star games where underclassmen, true juniors, can play in All-Star games, or at least the certain ones that were specified by the NFL. Senior Bowl is going to drop the 20 guys, the 20 underclassmen that are going to play tomorrow. So we're going to do a breakdown on that as well. And it's going to be fun, man. And so if you guys could subscribe and like over there, that'd be awesome. We really put a lot of work into that.
The one thing, well, I'll tell you this. One thing I know is John is a smart guy and can say very smart things about football. So that's why I appreciate you coming on. But I appreciate that. I remember the first time, I think John's been part of every single one of these supplemental drafts or dispersal or quarterback and do that stuff. I remember the first time I had John, I'm like, he's just so smart. I'm so glad because, I just provide the platform and I'm glad we bring on everyone to do the analysis. I will just say this before we get out. It's so weird seeing the XFL here retweeting Michigan Panthers content. Like, I'll never get over, like, I know we're getting, excuse my cough here. I know we're getting the socials figured out with the UFL, but I will never get over just a wild world we live in. Who would have thought here, XFL retweeting Michigan Panthers post of Case Cook's highlights. So this is kind of the inception of the world.
It's going Corey Coleman, and he's going to have a good year. I think that's going to be it's going to be fun.
Well, thanks everyone. Like I said, stick around. News comes out, we'll go live. Otherwise, we'll probably sit tight for the supplemental draft. And then I know Jason Hussey, we're figuring out the CFL free agency show we're going to work on at some point as well. So not forgetting about all the CFL, but have enjoyed not having the 2.5 hour pre-tapes every Friday here. It's been nice just kind of hopping on, doing the lives. John, best of luck. Exciting times at Ron Rivera firing day today and everything else. So excited to hear all the things that you think all the smart people with the Commanders now we're going to do with them.
I'm going to make you a prediction.
Okay.
I'll make you a prediction. I think your next head coach is Eric Bieniemy.
Oh, I don't like that. I don't like that, John.
Just that's my pick. That's what I think. I think I called it the beginning of the year. Actually, when Bieniemy got hired, I called it.
I'm like my heart's up. Excuse me. I like not having a defensive person. I think I saw a lot of names floating out from the Ravens and things. I think we need to bring in an offensive.
And I'm not trying to scare you with this, Reed, but I called Ron Rivera getting hired by Washington when he got fired by the Panthers. I have the tweet to prove it too. So.
You're scaring me, John. Well, we'll see. I think we have a lot of smart people. If he can run, you get Caleb Williams in there, get Drake May, kind of run circles. But yeah, appreciate everyone. Like I said, like and subscribe, get on John's stuff. We'll appreciate everyone. We'll see you next time. Thanks.